Welcome to Trudge the Road. Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic.
Coming up a little later on in the show, Kris Bashore is going to be joining us. Kris is going to talk about ANON and also talk about the Breakthrough program here at Caron.
It is incredible. The Breakthrough program is a 5.5-day residential program. It is specifically designed for adults who are impacted by family or relationship dysfunction, either in childhood or in adult life. It's a phenomenal program with incredible results. I can't wait for it to get here. You're going to love it. Kris is coming up shortly.
Also, Glen is going to be coming back. He's going to tell us how he came to accept a power greater than ourselves. A couple of program notes. You can catch prior episodes on YouTube. We have a channel there. It's youtube.com/Trudge the Road. We also have a Facebook page, and we have a Twitter account, which is TTR Show. But in this particular segment, as we start the show, we want to talk about dealing with disappointment. As addicted people, disappointment is always magnified. We all suffer disappointment. You don't have to be addicted to get disappointed. However, as I just mentioned,
we take it to a new level.
We do. We get it gets blown out of proportion.
I'll give you an example. A friend of mine trying to buy a new car recently and couldn't qualify for the loan. Didn't get the loan through the first try. It's the end of the world. I'm going to die now because I don't, have this new car, get this car loan. Eventually he, got a car loan, had to pay a little more interest, but that disappointment turns into the end of the world in just a split second.
I can relate to that.
Sure.
Same thing. If I apply for a credit card and I don't get a credit card, then
they don't like me, man.
Oh, jeez, it's just terrible.
I can give you a perfect example of disappointment, and let me predicate that by saying that in my recovery, as many of you, we always try to put God's will first. What does God want? Because the only thing I absolutely positively know is that God's will is always good, 100% of the time. I know that. That is a fact. Probably the only one I know. But before I found recovery, I worked in the broadcast and media, and I had a successful career. Unfortunately, I destroyed it by my addiction, and it was gone. People, I think, would say he's a nice guy till he drinks, and then all heck is going to break loose, and there's going to be an awful price to pay. And that's just a reality. That was the truth. I had drunk up my career in broadcasting. It was over with. And that was all right, because by that time, a few years into recovery, I went back to school. I became a social worker. I was a chemical dependency counselor, and I worked right in the middle of addiction in poverty-stricken neighborhoods, and I was completely dedicated and had given up on broadcasting because of my behavior. That I am responsible. I'm the one who did that. But always in the back of my mind, I wanted to get back into it. I wanted to be back on TV. I wanted to be on the radio, but accepted what was in front of me and made the best of it. Into recovery, I can't remember, 7 or 8 years. And again, I'm working in Louisville, Kentucky as a chemical dependency counselor. I got contacted by a fella who I used to work with in communications and broadcasting. And he was, what happened to you? And I told him the story. Where I ended up and where I was now. And I was experiencing that happy, joyous, and free. I was good. And he mentioned that he was going to work in sports in the Western Athletic Conference and had thought about me as an announcer producer. Wow. Then I reminded him, of my past. Of course, it has been a significant amount of time has passed since I've taken a drug or a drink. And again, I'm dedicated to doing what I can to help the next alcoholic. Well, he says, you do sound like you've changed quite a bit. Maybe something can happen here. Ooh, here comes the opposite of disappointment, hope. Right. And then ego slides in there. So I start asking him some questions like, what kind of money? And we had that kind of relationship. Well, it was going to over quadruple the amount of money, because of course I wasn't exactly making a fortune there in the hood as a chemical dependency counselor. Plus, we were going to be based out of Las Vegas. The Western Athletic Conference was where it was, and that included UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, University of Hawaii, San Diego State, Brigham Young, Air Force, Colorado State University, just incredible places to travel, and especially during basketball season, you're on the road all the time. Can't believe it. This is great. This is going to happen.
Perfect for a single guy like
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons that they considered me, because I could travel easily. Well, another couple of phone calls came, some more questions, talked to some other people. Great response. You sound perfect. I'm going. I'm ready, and I'm back. And in my mind, and this is how sick it was, I was thinking God was paying me back, for being such a darn good social worker. I was getting what I deserved.
Here's a bone plus two.
Exactly.
Gary.
If I was actually going to get what I deserved, we'd be in Leavenworth. But in my mind, that's it. It was, oh, thank you, God. And I told this to my sponsor, who kept saying, where is God's role in this whole thing? And it's payback, Doc. It's pay. You're crazy. Don't set yourself up. Another couple of phone calls. By this time, I'm picking out the sport coat I'm going to be wearing, because we all the time wear those matching sport coats, and right. I'm going to be looking good. I call the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, ask them to send me all the information about apartments and where to live in Vegas. I mean, I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. I'm telling my friends, hey, man, it's only going to be a little bit of time. I'm going to be moving to Vegas. Love you. All this. I'm having all these great things are happening to me. I'm there. I'm already there, and again, I've got a sponsor who just tries to water this thing down. And of course, I just simply say, you don't know what you're talking about, crazy old man.
I'm in the broadcast industry. I used to be, and I know how this works.
I am somebody. All right. Well, and then the phone rings that day, man. And have you ever had that where you pick up the phone and you just say hello, and you can tell in an instant the demeanor on the other end is going to give you bad news? And I just, oh man, please. It was that call. Somebody up the ladder had done some investigating, and they didn't have to go very deep, I assure you, to find out my record, and I'm sure made a wise business decision. I don't want that drunk monkey on my broadcast team. I don't care if he's been sober 8-9 years. I don't care. I don't want him.
Not worth the risk.
Not worth the risk. And if he looked anywhere deep into my record, well, he made an appropriate decision. I have to say that. That would be a good business decision if he didn't know me personally. And, of course, he did not know me personally.
But you did not feel that at the time.
I certainly didn't. I felt that word that you brought up, disappointment on a level that is just difficult to articulate and impossible to define. A depression and anger, a fear. How could this happen? And mad at God. How could you do this to me? And, again, I'm constantly reminded, what does God have to do with anything here? But I was still mad because I thought this was my payback, and I thought that this is some kind of horrible joke. How can you do this to me? You are wrecking my life. Everything was going to be perfect, and now it's ruined. You see what we talk about with disappointment? That's what I was feeling. That's what I was saying. And to get over that, I wish I could tell you that I just popped into a couple of meetings and everything was just bang, bang, good again. It was not. It took time. It took time for me in a process of working with a sponsor and some other very spiritual people within Alcoholics Anonymous to accept that, I do work for the family business. I am a chemical dependency counselor. I am making a difference on the street, that maybe God needs me there to get your ego out of the way and add a little bit of humility. And I wish I could say that just happened, but it didn't. It took time. And eventually, 6-8 months down the road, I had accepted it. Still wasn't happy with it, but I had accepted it as a reality and was ready to move on, I thought, but still in the back of my mind, I just want this. Anyway, I'm home. This is about 9 months after this happened, for lunch there at my apartment, little penthouse on the ghetto. Lovely place. Having lunch, and I've got ESPN on, and they come across with a flash that the broadcast team in the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, on a flight from Laramie, Wyoming to Denver, crashed. And there were no survivors. Now, if I got my way, if Jarrett would have got not only what he wanted, but was demanding and was putting demands on God for, I would have been on that plane. And I'd be dead many, many years. And so there I am sitting in the quiet of this apartment. I've just found out this news, and now I know God knows, and God knows I know. We all know the cat's out of the bag, and I can just feel him going, what do you think now, Jared? And see, it was God's will for me not to die, and that level of disappointment, that anger, and all that fear and frustration and behavior that I put other people through was just completely a waste of energy. as difficult as impossible to say that I wouldn't be disappointed, but I never considered that maybe God's will for me was something else. Maybe God's will for me was to do this radio program. Well, that certainly couldn't happen, obviously, if I was dead, So God's will, no matter what, is always good. And I predicate that with every prayer. Anytime I'm talking to God, and I just converse with God over issues in my life, and I'll end it. Your will be done. Not mine, because I've got a record. Oh, I've got a record. You've got a record, Jerry. Take a look at that. And it's not good. That's why I count on his will to be done in my life, because my will, because of that record and that proof, is very rarely right. And in this particular situation, where that level of disappointment is undefinable, you turn it around 8 months later and you find out. And
that's got to be one of the most extreme cases of a complete turnaround that I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But when you suffer disappointment, as you do throughout all the years afterwards, do you reflect upon something like that and go, well, okay, say you didn't get the car loan like you were talking about earlier. You have to work through that and think, well, there's got to be a reason I didn't get this car loan. Maybe there's a different car. Maybe that car is not the car that I was supposed to get, or you start working through that.
If you want to, go through all of that, you can. But there's a much simpler way, and that's just to turn it over. Just, when it starts getting complicated, my emotions become involved with my intellect, and especially in a situation where I need to be decisive, I need to get out of the way. God's will be done, not mine. And just step back, because life is full of disappointments. When the Washington Redskins lose, what a disappointment I have to put up with you. That's disappointment, but it's something that you're over with by Monday afternoon.
Well, yeah, unless the season ends the way it always ends, which is with them in the basement and, of course, stinking up the place. But then this year, you think about how it all played out. Well, they got a shot at RG3. So now we've got RG3. So that would have never happened had the Redskins had a mediocre season or even a winning season at that. So and it was part of the plan. I didn't see it coming, but then RG3 was available. Boom. So you look at it from a different angle.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed disappointment turn to absolute joy.
I'm just following along with you.
You're there, bro. You are there, man. And that's what it is. There's always another side to the coin. But life is full of little disappointments.
Exactly.
It's life on life's terms.
I can give you another example. My wife and I were looking for a house about 5 years ago. We had this house. We thought, wow, this is the house. We really want to get it. And for whatever reason, we got underbid on the house and we didn't get the house. Well, as life would have it, and this is kind of a weird story, it was a house that we were renting and we wanted to get the house. Right. Well, we came back to get our final load out of the house before we moved into the new house that we ended up getting, which we weren't as happy with as the old house. And I swear to you, this is true. The road was blocked as we were coming in. And we asked the emergency guy that was standing there on the side of the road what happened. And he said a car went through that house up there and went right through the front room. That front room, had we got that house and had we stayed in that house, we would have been on that couch when that car went all the way through. And it's the weirdest thing because it's kind of a back road. And somehow the girl driving, this story gets weirder. The girl driving had spilled coffee on her lap and jerked the wheel, and it ended up going over the driveway in through the front room where we would have been sleeping or laying or watching TV.
Oh, my God.
Turns out the girl was rushed to the hospital. And when she was in there, they did a brain scan on her and found out that she had a tumor in her brain, and that accident saved her life. How weird is that?
That's phenomenal, bro.
That's a true story.
It has to be.
You look at the disappointment of not getting the house and the series of events that took place afterwards.
You're looking at God just acting anonymously. There he is with his fingers in, watching out for us all the dang time. In several cases we just brought up here, and again, that's our problem. Lack of power. It's clear in the book. That is our dilemma. We have to find a power in our life by which we can live. And you can define that yourself as God as you choose to understand him or her and develop that relationship and be able to live happy, joyous, and free, even with life's disappointments.
Yes. So next time you're disappointed by something, step back for a few minutes. And you'll find out exactly why some things happen and some things don't.
Think about that story Rich just told, my Lord. That was wonderful.
Kris Bashore is coming up next. She's going to talk about ANON and also the Breakthrough program here at Caron. Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program, and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023 or go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org.
Can I give a shout out to Mary Blair, who helps us so much?
Mary Blair is great.
Mary, you rock.
Yeah, Mary works up with Mike Early. Mike Early is vice president at Caron Treatment Centers.
But don't be fooled. Mary's running the show.
Mary is running the show, and she's great about getting us guests and working with us to make sure that we have everything we need to do this program each week. As I mentioned, Kris Bashore is coming up next. This is the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry is joined by Kris Bashore, and they discuss Al-Anon and the Breakthrough Program at Caron. It's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new face of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Trudge the Road. Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to people who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs, and every bit as important, family and friends. You suffer immensely, and we know you've got a lot of questions. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide you some answers and ultimately, with God's good grace, some solutions to this dilemma. Trudge the Road is sponsored by the Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas. Offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 800-854-6023 or go to their website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. Shout out to Father Bill and Reverend Jack, a couple of the great people who work at Caron. One of the great people who works at Caron's name is Kris, and she's here with us right now. How are you, Kris?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming by. I really appreciate that. I know that this is kind of a strange situation to be in with all these microphones, and this is just not your normal environment.
No, it's not. It's a little intimidating, but I'm here by the grace of God, and so I'm just going to let it come as it comes.
That's how it happens. That's how it's going to happen. It's going to be just fine. Now, Kris, you work for Caron, but not in the therapeutic aspect of the treatment center, but more in the business end of things,
That's
correct?
exactly right. I have been working at Caron for 12 years. I oversee our human resources and training departments, and I help find all these qualified and wonderful and passionate, dedicated counselors who help the patients.
Well, let me tell you, you do the best job in the world. The people here are unbelievable. We just love being here just to pick up on the energy. You know, it's just fantastic. Now, listen, a little bit about your story here. We're not going to talk about what you do with human resources, but about your own experience, strength, and hope, and what got you into Al-Anon. And we talk a lot about Al-Anon here on Trudge the Road, and that was the beginning of your breakthrough. And we'll get to breakthrough here in just a bit. But tell us a little bit about what brought you into the rooms of Al-Anon, the addiction in your life.
Absolutely. 10 years ago, I married a man who I'm still happily married to, who is 35 years in recovery. And he certainly has spent a lot of time and has spent a lot of time in the rooms. So he first introduced me to Al-Anon. But what really drove me into Al-Anon was that we were intervening on my father. Mm-hmm. And my father's a highly functioning alcoholic, had been for many, many years. And we were about to truly do an intervention on him, which was one of the most intimidating things we've ever done. And I knew I needed help and support. All
right, and terrific. So we end up in the rooms of Al-Anon. So your dilemma really is almost the same as an alcoholic's. It's a power. You don't have that power by which you can live.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, is it common, and it has just been through work as a therapist, that I have found people in Al-Anon, as they begin to practice the steps, become aware of other issues, maybe even before they encounter the alcoholic or the addict in their life, traumatic events, possibly when they were younger, or previous relationships that really have been emotionally kind of caged up, that will allow, as this process of healing, they come to light. This is not uncommon, is it?
No, it's not uncommon at all. I mean, I've always felt like I was blessed that I didn't have so much that came up for me. Again, I had a fairly stable, even given my highly functioning alcoholic father. I had a fairly stable childhood. But when I had to start to peel away the layers at what was really at some of the core of my issues, what was happening for me.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
Yeah.
And for me, it was all around relationships, how I had looked for a relationship, how I had stuck onto relationships that were not healthy at all for me any longer, and how I got into that dynamic that put me in some pretty difficult and not healthy situations for sure.
This brings us to Breakthrough, which is a program at Caron. It's not a new program. It's got a lot of history to it, all the way back to 1984. And one of the things that in the literature about the Breakthrough program, it says moving from merely surviving to healthy living and breaking through. Now, there have been times in my own recovery over the last quarter of a century where there were walls, and I found help seeking either therapeutically outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or through just some intense work with a sponsor that would delve into those specifics and try and break through those walls. Here is a program that it's a 5.5-day residential program. I want you to tell everybody about it, but I've seen the before and after, and it's amazing. I think that you should take the photograph of everybody's face as they go in with that look of concern and question, and then the 5.5 days later, it really is amazing. It is amazing. I want you to tell us what Breakthrough is and what it did for you.
I agree. When I left Breakthrough and I went to my normal Friday night Al-Anon meeting, one of my friends came up to me and said, "You look like you lost 5 pounds." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They said, "You just look so much lighter." You're exactly right.
Radiant, that
exactly.
Grace. Yeah.
But you go in there and you are scared to death because you know that this is not like you're going off to a spa for the week. You're going to do intense work, and you're going to peel the layers away, and that's going to get rough. And so what it really is, the 5 days is really prepping to do that peeling away of the layers, and then it's the actual peeling away. So the first couple of days, they talk just a lot about family dynamics, the roles that each of us play as a typical person in an alcoholic family, because most people that go in there are from an alcoholic family, either whether they're also in recovery themselves or they have a fair amount of trauma that they're dealing with. So it's first just talking about what does a dysfunctional family look like? What are some of the typical roles that someone plays, like we talked about, like I was the caregiver, I was the hero of the family, I was the fixer of everything. And then after you kind of get that as a backdrop, then you start to really do your own family structuring, which is where you're telling your family story, but you're utilizing other people in your group to help. They represent people in your family, and you are really getting to the core of what drove you there. Because I always say that the reason I went to Breakthrough is because I was stuck. I was stuck in my marriage. I was stuck professionally. I was stuck personally. I was stuck with my family dynamic of my family of origin and my father and my mother. And so I was stuck, and I needed something to get me unstuck. And so it's very, very painful, but it is extremely enlightening. And what you start to do is really say, here is my family. Here was my experience as a child. Or here's the trauma that I experienced in my life. And so it's only from your perception, which is wonderful, because one of the things I think, at least from my perspective, from an Al-Anoner, is we always had to prove to somebody what we really saw, because there was a lot of denial in an alcoholic family.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was always, yes, my father really is an alcoholic, or someone proving that their spouse really was, or that their sister was, or whatever their story was. And so what Breakthrough is wonderful about is they come in and they just want your perception. They want your reality of your childhood, of your family of origin, and what in that created you to be the person that you were, and what was holding you back from that.
If I can use the words emotional surgery, I don't know, maybe that's just too much, but that's kind of what it sounds like.
It is. Now they get you ready. They prep you for surgery, if you want to use that analogy.
Okay.
But at that moment when you go through, and what's interesting is not only do you learn from your own family dynamic, but you are participating in the other people in your group. So in somebody's, in their family structure, you may be representing a spouse or a mother or a father or a sibling. And so some of of what you experience is not just from the time that you go and that you use that as your center work of what your life was like. You also learn from others because you're helping them play out their issues.
Okay, which would be my big issue in this thing is going to be fear. I am going to be afraid of it. I come from a family of secrets,
Yes.
and to be able to open myself up to that degree is going to be very, very difficult. And let me give you an example here, just on another side. I had back surgery recently, and I was in a lot of pain, but I was petrified of that surgery. I was so scared to death of that I was almost willing to live with the pain
Yes.
rather than have it, but faced the fear, the reality was over with, and all of a sudden I don't have any pain anymore. And I wonder, what was I so afraid about? But and you disagree with me if you will. For me, I really think that we suffer from the disease of fear, and that alcohol and drugs are our medicine.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so much shame involved, whether you're in recovery yourself or whether you came from a family of addiction, because no one is proud of what they did. I shouldn't say no one, but certainly I wasn't proud of all of my coping mechanisms, which were certainly not healthy. And there was a lot of other people who weren't proud with their coping mechanisms. And I always go back to, what something that was said to me during that time, which is, you do the best you can with what you know at that time. And so that kind of alleviates shame, because we do a whole exercise when you're at breakthrough around how do you give that shame up? How do you turn that over? How do you get rid of it? Because it's one of the things that's holding you back.
Shame was the thing that kept me drunk. And in all honesty, because if you look at my record, I spent almost 12 years in and out, and I would do those fourth steps. But I would always keep that's going with me to the grave, so it obviously would never go into the fifth step. And certainly 6-8 months down, and shame-based, all of it shame-based, would come back, haunt me. I couldn't cope with that, and what the results were.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of it, in my particular case, I don't want to make this about me, but culturally, the way that I was brought up, things of shame were really, really bad, and to even tolerate them in your conscience was a difficult procedure to try to alleviate them. And I've done that in a fifth step, and I've done it successfully, and it has worked. But I can see, where there still is some wound, still some bleeding somewhere down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that everybody's got that fire in their belly that's still there. And so it's how do you get in there? How do you do the surgery on that fire of the belly, get it back out, get it out so that you can move forward. And that's really what Breakthrough is about. And so you have to be in a very safe environment. I mean, I was blessed, and I think everyone feels this way, that they're put in with a group of people that, as one of my friends used to say, is it odd or is it God? I mean, you're put into a group that those folks represent so many things of what you need to hear and see, but you have to feel safe.
Right.
And the counselors and the staff at Breakthrough make you feel safe. It is unconditional love for that week that you are there. They are there just for the sole purpose of helping you move forward.
It sounds incredibly intense, and we know of its success. It's been proven for years and years. And a tip of the hat to Ann Smith. She's a wonderful, wonderful therapist.
Yes.
And a delightful person, as you have certainly been here today. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it,
Well,
Kris.
thank you for letting me share my story.
It has been, and I hope we have you back.
I'd love to be back.
Because we need to continue talking about this. I can see it in your eyes, girl. I can see the success in your eyes. It's wonderful. Hey, listen, thank you very much. We'll be back in a minute. Let me tell everybody, the Trudge the Road is brought to you by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction, specializing in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females. They have a relapse prevention program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, give them a call at 800-854-6023 or go to the website caron.org. That's CARON.org. We'll be back with more of Trudge the Road in just a moment on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Glen Goodman joins Jerry and discusses how he came to accept a power greater than himself. It's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Trudge the Road is a radio program which is dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And to everybody is important, family and friends, you suffer tremendously, and we know that you have lots and lots of questions, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some answers to this dilemma, and with God's good grace, maybe some solutions for you. Trudge the Road is brought to you by some very cool people, the Caron Treatment Centers. Caron's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Now, they've got treatment centers in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, the Big Apple, Philly, and D.C. You can reach them by calling 800-854-6023. I suggest their website, which is caron.org. That's caron.org. caron.org. Incredibly wonderful people, and we appreciate that. Glen Goodman is here with us. Glen works at the Caron Treatment Centers, but he's my big book daddy. And of course, that's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is our guide, and I love to talk about it, and so does he. And it does bring the answer or the solution to our dilemma, if you will. And I thought specifically we might address that by looking at We Agnostics, the chapter in the big book, which states lack of power. That was our dilemma. I always thought, it was alcohol and drugs, but no, a lack of power. That's our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Of course, that's what this book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, is all about. But this power greater than ourselves, and I think that kind of grows as we mature within our sobriety, can be anything. And if you will, Glen, give us your perspective as a man with many years of solid recovery, a counselor, and a fellow who knows this book.
Definitely changes over time, finding a power greater than ourselves, at least for me, was difficult. Powerlessness really goes against every cell in my body and most everybody else that I've talked to and worked with in this program. Just accepting powerlessness is tough. That surrender piece is something that doesn't happen easily for people,
I'm assuming, too, for a man who spent 4 years in the United States Marines, the word surrender probably really isn't much in your vocabulary right now.
Wasn't allowed. In there lies the difficulty for everybody, not so much as the military influence, but basically that giving up piece, that internalized belief system that we have that says, I got to figure this out, right. Or, you know what I mean? Just that drive to come to solutions, men just fix things.
Right.
And to admit defeat means weakness, and those internal beliefs needed to really change.
As a matter of fact, in the book, it says that, and I'll quote here, we were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly.
And for me, the most of that was about, I really didn't have enough information to ever give, the religion that I was brought up on a chance. Mm-hmm. Not that I practice any organized religion today, but I heck, they spoke Latin still in the
same here. Right.
So I didn't even know what the heck they were saying. Yeah. Somebody gave me something that was really helpful for me, and I pass it on every chance I get. And that's that if you want to seek a power greater than yourself and you're struggling with the God image, if there's a struggle there, why not look for truth and allow truth based in your own evidence to become a power greater than you at this point. I grabbed onto that, and, there was pretty much no denying where my life was at when I was coming in. And the truth was not pretty, although it was based in fact, and I couldn't candy coat it or I couldn't manipulate it. Especially when I put it on paper, then the truth kind of stands back and looks at you. So, finding truth was really my first experience in accepting a guidance in my life.
Absolutely. It is a struggle. Just to let go in the beginning is so magnificent. And then to accept something that is not tangible is difficult at minimum. Now, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, I think is where I got my first taste of it because I saw it in other people. I saw it working in people's lives. Something was going on in their lives that, again, wasn't tangible that I could put my finger on, but I could see the change and I could see the results.
In time, that happened for me.
Right.
Not right away. I believed you all were a bunch of liars.
Give us this, and mostly I did too. I thought, you were all full of it. I won't. But give us the story. You walked in the door and you thought, well, these people are nuts.
Well, the blessing that was for me was there was guys in there that I was on the streets with. And I still thought they were full of you know what, but they kind of took me under their arm. It was difficult. I don't know if I wanted to stop using. I thought I wanted to get in control of it, like most every addict, alcoholic.
That was my goal, to just want to get it under control.
Yeah, because the spiral in life was heading to the toilet fast.
Right, real fast.
Yeah, and these fellows took me under their arm, and they gave me, the time, the dignity, the respect, that we didn't really give each other out in the streets, but in there, there was something different about them. Mm-hmm. Didn't know what that was.
So you saw it too. See?
Yeah, there was something different about them, and I didn't have a clue what that was, but it was attractive.
Mm-hmm. When did you feel it? When did you get kind of that sense of it?
Somewhat right away, but I really fought it.
Mm-hmm.
That powerlessness, I just fought it. It's like when I surrendered, it was an overwhelming experience that the fight was over.
Right.
Right.
At least the beating's over,
Yeah, it was like the war was over.
Right.
In that lie a great deal of peace, that I don't have to fight anymore. I have no clue how to do life on life's terms, but I don't have to fight anymore. And that was well over a year and a half in recovery. I pretended because I heard fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And I pretended. I wanted to get well. I wanted to be well, but I was by no means well.
No.
By no means. All the attitudes, all the beliefs, all the behaviors were still pretty present. And I was bumping into powerlessness every day, about 150,000 times a day.
Yes, yeah.
But not doing well, not dealing with it really well,
right.
Not accepting it, thinking that I can do something different, thinking that I know better. We're dominating ideas.
It's the kind of the clash of just our culture that tells us we are supposed to fix that stuff, and the ego that goes on top of it, which is so threatened and beat up because we can't. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that as they call it the jumping off point. The progression that you made. So it's a year and a half into this. Was there anything significant? Did you find it in the steps? What made the change that gave you at least the courage to maybe believe that I can take this spirituality thing one step further?
My way wasn't working.
Okay.
Put it in a nutshell. And talking about moving into powerlessness so many times throughout the day, you get tired of making amends for the same things over and over again. And piece by piece, that surrender occurs. Like I used to hear, we'd give it up in millimeters, mm-hmm. That power, that struggle for power. And that's basically what it was for me, is that struggle for power. I thought, nobody else has ever done it for me. You know what I mean? So there wasn't a lot of that I could identify with to help except me. Mm-hmm. And boy, did I make a miserable failure out of that. And to have to depend on something I can't see, feel, hear, taste, touch was foreign to me, alien. So the truth was really what I was getting up against every day.
So accepting the truth then basically as that higher power, or the fact that reality is what it is, and I'm going to have to cope with it and deal with it on the mechanisms of life that I have.
Right.
Which were minimal at that time.
Well, yeah, they didn't work most of the time.
Right.
So they needed to change.
Everything needs to change.
Yeah, that's what it was pointing to.
And here comes that counterintuitive measurements that we have to take. I don't want to do that, and facing that fact. So, a year and a half into this, I'm assuming then that you have made some changes
along the way. Yeah, subtle, small changes.
Ones,
the definition in the back of the book where it talks about spiritual experience, it says something along the lines that others notice it in you before you notice it yourself. And I really wasn't seeing any change in myself that I could bank on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Write down and take to the bank. Yeah.
Yeah, my automatic behaviors were when I wasn't thinking, I would go back and do the same thing. I think the turnaround or the turning point that came for me was when finally a case that with the legal people came to a close, which revealed instead of 5 to 15, it revealed promotion fines and costs. And the lawyer that I had found in recovery was just a gift from God because, he took a monetary figure for to acquire him. And then he never charged me another nickel because he said he's hardly ever gets a case that works out this way. And so he said, enjoy your life. And from that point on, there was something different.
You felt the intervention.
Yeah, I felt something different there, and that was very special.
This is one of those occasions where I almost wish this was television. The expression on your face as you tell that story completely changes.
Yeah.
And I can tell that you're still quite moved by that. It sounds like you've gotten out quite a foundation.
Yeah. I've got, my power greater than me today is the God of my understanding. And that power, although I can't see it, feel it, touch it, I have come to know that it's there. Not believe any longer, come to know.
No.
And that was a process of coming to believe. And it came as a result of the many experiences collected along the way. Faith for me has become the result of experiences, and in losing an 8-year-old boy to cancer, experiences of my, mother dying, experiences of, feeling like I am at a financial end and something just pops up, Whenever I sit in an 11-step meeting, you know what I mean, the peace just comes over me because I know that no matter what comes down the pike today, we can handle it. My support network, the power greater than me, we can handle. I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to be okay. I may not get what I want, but I have always, every time, gotten what I needed, and that's a blessing.
You're a blessing. Glen, thank you so very much. Having you here on a regular basis is just absolutely a gift. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's wonderful. That's Glen. He works here, by the way, at Caron, and we appreciate that. We'll find out more about what he does as time goes on. We're going to go over the steps, and we're going to get to know this guy a whole lot better, and I'm sure you want to after that wonderful interview. Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females. Plus, I've got a relapse program and, yes, outpatient services. So listen, if you are concerned about yourself, if you're concerned about a loved one, call them. 800-854-6023. Go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. This is Trudge the Road on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry, and they discuss the lengths that addicts and alcoholics go to keep being addicts and alcoholics. It's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new phase of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road, sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic, and our program here, Trudge the Road, is dedicated to people who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And of course, family members out there, you suffer immensely, and we know that, and we know you have a lot of questions, and that's our purpose here, is to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can, and with God's grace, provide a solution to this dilemma.
So far, great show. Big thanks to Kris Bashore, who talked with us about Al-Anon and the Breakthrough Program at Caron.
That Breakthrough Program is absolutely amazing. I'm serious, and I'd love to go through it.
Glen, also, big thank you for coming back and talking about a power greater than ourselves and how he came to accept it, especially since he had a lot of difficulty with that, and as a lot of people do.
Exactly. It comes down to that surrender thing, and for him it was so difficult because he was a U.S. Marine for years and years, and that word surrender just is not in their language at all.
Now, if you missed that portion of the show, this will be posted up on YouTube, and you can catch that by going to youtube.com/Trudge the Road Radio, and we have all our past shows up there as well. Facebook, if you're not a friend of ours on Facebook, become one. Just go to facebook.com/Trudge the Road Radio, and of course we have a Twitter feed as well where I send out messages and links and things of that nature.
And we appreciate that.
Just put in the search engine TTR Show. We want to talk about addiction and addicts and the lengths we go to keep being addicts and alcoholics.
The way that we fool you earth people, as we say, because your brains don't go the same way that ours do. And regardless of what your drug of choice is, once you've crossed that line and you're in the addictive mode, you'll do whatever it takes to make sure that supply is either there, taken care of, or is coming in. And it becomes really your only priority. And it's really kind of subtle in the way it starts, in ways that just aren't normal in society. Let me give you an example. I had this old car, and I think it was a Chevy, what they call them, Chevettes. Remember Chevy Chevettes?
Oh, yeah, I had a Chevette.
They were a wonderful automobile. But what I did is, where the windshield wiper reservoir is in the automobile, in the engine compartment,
Right.
where you put the windshield wiper fluid to wash your windshield. I cleaned that out the best that I possibly could and filled it with 100 proof vodka. And then the hose that runs up to the windshield to squirt the windshield wiper on the windshield so that you can get clean, I pulled into the car. So it was just hanging right by where the emergency brake was by my left foot, next to the clutch. So at any time, all I had to do was hit wash, and it would pump out a shot of vodka into a coffee cup right into the car. Now that, if you're not an addicted person, that thought never has even entered your mind in the most obscure manner. However, if you are an addicted person, number one, you're either saying, well, that was a pretty good idea, or I did that myself, and it's those extremes we go to. And I can remember an incident specifically where a young lady and I were going out. We were going to a bar, and we're traveling in this automobile, and I came up to a stoplight and grabbed a coffee cup and hit wash and filled it up with some motor vodka. and she said to me, what are you doing? I'm having a shot of motor vodka. And I remember, I'll never forget the look on her face, and she turned to me and said these exact words, dude, you have got a problem. And I said, what problem? I've got this thing licked. I've got no problem whatsoever. Drank that vodka, went to the bar. Now, if there's an addicted person out there right now, you're going to completely understand this. I drank 4 times as much as anybody else, and I was the only one there who was not drunk. That's an alcoholic, and that's our incredible level of tolerance. Now, I may go home and have another drink. You may go home, a non-addicted person, and have a drink. You go to the cabinet and pull out the liquor bottle. Not me. I go to the toilet tank where it's floating in the back. So you won't find it. All of those obscure things in obscure places. And we're doing these behaviors on a daily basis, and this is the insanity of the disease, is we don't see that we're doing anything abnormal. We're doing what comes to us as normal, and that's how sick we become and how it progresses and gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and how it will affect the family members. Just imagine what it was like being married to me when that was my kind of behavior, or dating me, being my parent. Just so incredibly frustrating, because you would never consider these modes of behavior. That would never cross your mind. And when you're presented with them, how do you deal with that? How do you? My son is doing what? He's got vodka in the reservoir of the windshield wiper fluid mechanism in the car, and he's drinking vodka out of that, and he's hiding vodka in the toilet tank. What am I going to do? How does this even enter his head? How does this behavior become rationalized? It's because of the disease of addiction. It is the insanity of it, and that becomes the progressive day-to-day way that we function, is protect that supply, have the supply handy at all times, and never, ever let it be interfered with.
Well, and it also lends itself to secrecy, which is a topic we've talked about because we do a lot of this on the sly. You may have shared it with that girl in the seat next to you because, well, let's face it, it was kind of cool for you.
And I didn't think I had any type of a problem. I thought, I've got this. I can drink better than you can.
Well, that's part of the first step is admitting you have a problem. So until we hit that first step, we don't think we have a problem. We just think we're pretty smart and ingenious. Look what I did. Look where I've gone. When I was out running around and I was, crystal meth. I mean, let's face it. Much like an alcoholic, you can't tell the truth where a lie will fit. I mean, that's just
certainly
that's the bottom line. And stashing and hiding and taking off the top, making the bag light, if you will. I mean, this is all just part of a daily nature. Every lie, no matter when I was confronted, no matter what someone said to me, I had a stash of lies that was already in my head to pretty much adapt to any particular situation. It's funny, we were just out this weekend, my wife and I, we were at a little cabin up in the mountains, and you don't get any cell service and you don't get any internet. And
you were isolated.
We were very isolated, but there was a little river running back there, and my wife can't swim. And I said to her, don't go anywhere without me being there because I can swim, and of course I'll be your hero. And she said, yes, didn't you save somebody's life before? I went, oh, yeah, that's right. I went and saved an old couple out of a canal one time, which is a running joke between us because that was an excuse I had used many years ago on why I disappeared for 3 days when I was out on a drug binge.
Right.
We just can't tell the truth. And it lends itself, again, I'll just repeat myself here, it lends itself to the secret nature of our addicted behavior.
The secret nature that's right out in the open. And that's we're blind. Everybody's blind to this. We can't see what's happening right in front of our eyes. We have to wait until there's consequences. And in our case, some very, very severe consequences. What really is, it's the insanity that Bill is talking about in the second step. It doesn't mean the insane things that we do when we're drunk. Non-addicted people do crazy things when they're drunk. What he meant by that insanity in the second step is that anyone, after a period of physical sobriety, who would return to drinking again. That's the insanity he refers to in the second step. And that is absolutely the most insane thing that you could possibly do. When you get some time and to examine what you have done rationally and have it explained to you with a clear mind and see the damage and the consequences of it, and then drink again, and then do it again. Absolutely, positively insane. And that's where he's using that word. And that certainly applies to you and me. There were consequences after consequences, bottom after bottom, and devastation after devastation, and we would still go back and do it again. And this time, it's going to be different. This time, it's going to be better. This time, I won't do that. We'll tell those lies to ourselves when we know for a fact exactly what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen, and we do it anyway. That's a level of insanity that we have that is just really indefinable and kind of limited to those of us who are addicted to drugs and alcohol.
And of course, confronting someone who is currently in that process, that thought process, it's a scary proposition. If you know someone in your life that's going through this and you call them, hey, look, I found a bottle of vodka in the back of the toilet tank.
What's the deal?
What's the response? What's the response you would have given?
It ain't mine. I don't know how that got there. That's yours. I don't know what you're talking about. Deny. To the point where the person who is accusing you of this or who has found that, they think they're crazy. We are so adamant about the fact that our behavior did not happen, even when it's right in your face, that we are so convincing that you begin to question yourself. Am I the one who's nuts? Am I the one who's crazy? And that's how we suck you into the vortex of this disease and how people we love get so incredibly sick. It's simply this: sanity and insanity clash. They won't tolerate each other. Sanity and insanity clash. The problem is insanity is the one that wins. Because insanity doesn't have to tell the truth. Insanity doesn't have to even put reality into a perspective. We can look at it any way we want. And again, the more it clashes with sanity, sanity just goes away.
This is Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-850-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. Jerry, Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it. We love you, and we're going to pray for you.
This is the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you want to catch prior episodes, just go to YouTube and type Trudge the Road Radio in the search engine. And thank you for listening on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.